You're listening to The Best of Perry Gauthier, where we remember our friend and leader who was taken from us in this life in December of 2020. It is our hope that his memory lives on in the hundreds and thousands of people who he touched both in and outside of capitals in this country and around the world. We will be sharing interviews that Perry did for radio and television throughout the following weeks. Perry was always prepared to share the good news of Christ and God's love for politicians and people serving in the political realm. On our last Best of Perry podcast today, Pastor Perry is sharing about how God is going to have victory on the earth. I wonder who he's going to use. Also, he's looking at motherly and fatherly love and the problem with the shampoo Jesus. Take it away, Perry.
Because we know, even though we are all sinners, we all fall short, we know that it ought not to be this way. When we see great evil, when we see lying, theft, murder, and senseless war, we know in our knower that it should not be this way. So this is such a powerful verse, so important for the New Testament Christian to realize that civil government is a ministering avenger. Now, vengeance, revenge, avenge, avenger, all these English words are the same English word, and they all have a root, which means to have victory. So who's going to win? Well, you know who's going to win over evil? God himself is going to win over evil. And not just in the sweet by and by. He wants to do it here. How did the Lord teach his disciples to pray? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So regarding this war of evil and evildoers, the Christian needs to stand up. We need to speak up. We need to fight. We need to live right. But then we have our role in fighting evil, whether it's salt or light or like Martin Luther King Jr., an area where justice is not being done and seeking justice, true biblical justice, not this new neo-Marxist kind of a social justice warrior thing. We can get into that later. But so who's going to win over evil? Well, God wants to win over evil. And we'll close our podcast in a minute with looking at a very important verse about God's wrath. And who is he? Well, he's a victor over evil. He's an avenger. He brings wrath. And we forget that. We think he's just love, 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 love. Trevor Loudon, the New Zealander who now has come to America, is quite an insightful commentator and analyzer of political things. He said in his talk, Enemies Within the Church, he said the church is plagued with an overbalance of what is called feminine love. Now, feminine love, mother's love, is soft, warm, merciful, accepting. Oh, you fell down, sweetheart. Let me kiss your cheeks and hold you. And that is all good. But it has to be counterbalanced within the institution of marriage and family with fatherly love, with manly love, which Trevor says, well, mom will kiss your cheek. Well, dad will kick your tail. And dad will say, did you do your chores, young man? And dad will bring the hammer, and dad will have the discipline and the sternness. Men are more wired for some of these things, and men and women together make beautiful teams of parents, and that's why there's no such thing as parenting. There's mothering and there's fathering, and you got to get them together, really, both of them, to have parenting. Well, the church has fallen prey to this soft, it's all, Jesus is just the sweet, gentle Jesus. Vodi Bakum calls him the shampoo model from Europe, with his hair flowing and his manicured nails. We have this effeminated Jesus, and the church is too soft. So often the church doesn't even get this passage in this verse that's saying, hey, here's what God is doing. He's setting up civil government to be an avenging minister on earth, not the future, on earth to bring wrath. You look up the word wrath in the dictionary and you see words like synonyms like anger, rage, ire, and fury. Wow. Oh, that's how God feels? If you want to lynch your neighbor If you want to rape, pillage, and burn, yes, that's how God feels. Jonathan Edwards, in his famous sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, speaks of God's anger and wrath. And let's not forget that, because if you forget that, you are much more likely to misunderstand the role of government as an avenger with lethal power. That means deadly force. Deadly force. The Scottish man spoke of his mum, and he said, she put the fear of God in you. And what he meant was she spanked him with a rod, and that stubborn young man. And I tell you what, there is something about God that we have forgotten, that he's holy, just, and he does indeed bring noble wrath on evildoers.
Perry was the best at touching on sensitive topics such as God's wrath, and that is what I truly miss. And we are excited to have Pastor Aaron Hess give a farewell message here in the near future. So glad to introduce him to you. And on that note, we are remiss to close out the Best of Perry podcast. If you would like to hear the full podcast of what you heard today, go to episode 21 from season 1, and you can get the full message there. We're so glad to bring you these resources so you have Perry's boldness that can travel with you wherever you are and give you the confidence through getting into the Word and getting your source of strength from God Himself. Continue to let God love you and guide you into places and conversations where you can be His salt and light.